Hello, everyone.
Good afternoon and happy Tuesday.
Hope everyone is doing great as the weather in the east is getting colder.
I wish it were getting colder here. It's hot where I am.
Now we're all sitting here deciding, should we put on the heat or hold off?
Yeah, my mom is in Baltimore and she lit a fire for the first time last weekend.
So. Wow, look at that. See?
Yeah, let us know where you guys are tuning in from as you join us here. We always love to hear your guys' perspective and your voices. This is not a one-way conversation. This is not just a podcast. This is also interactive. So fire your questions at us and stay part of this conversation. It is a two-way dialogue. So Denny, what did we talk about last week and what are we talking about today?
Well, last week I was not here, but you interviewed Becky Nova, and I have heard great stuff about that interview. Watched it myself, and it was phenomenal. She's just a lot of fun. A great lady. And today we're going to be talking about safe and creative house hacking. Try saying that 10 times, house hacking tactics during COVID. Because let's face it, again, COVID does impact our lives, at least for now.
Back in March, we didn't think we would still be talking about this in October. No. At least we hoped we weren't going to be, but here we are. So hopefully we're not talking about this next October.
I don't think we will.
I don't
Positive thinking.
You never know. So Tim Dooley chimed in. He said, great topic today. Glad to be here. Well, Tim, we're glad to have you with us, as always.
Absolutely. So. How you doing, Tim? So, just in case you don't know about house hacking is a way to slash living costs, and in some instances, live for free. And there's many ways to do it, whether it's, and we're going to go over some of them, but whether it's buying a small multi, living in one, renting out the others, renting out rooms in your house, and some of the other things that that you can do. So with that being said, I'm going to leave it to you, Brian, to talk to us about the first tactic.
Sure. Well, traditionally when people talk about house hacking, they're talking about buying a small multifamily. And by small, we mean 2 to 4 units, because up to 4 units is still classified as residential, which means you can use conventional mortgage financing for it. Above 4 units, 5 units and up, those are qualified as commercial properties and they require a totally different set of financing. So traditional house hacking, you buy a small multifamily, a 2 to 4 unit property, move into one of the units, and then you rent out the other unit or units. And the rent from your neighboring units ends up covering your mortgage. So you get to live for free, or at least free housing.
Right.
Now, not everyone loves the idea of living in a multifamily. Some people don't like the idea of becoming a landlord, although, if you're listening to this podcast or video cast, then you're probably not one of those people. But one thing that you can do during COVID, because we do have this eviction moratorium hanging over our heads as landlords, and there's no way to enforce our lease agreements right now. So one way that you can skirt around that pretty major restriction right now is to rent out your other unit or units to Airbnb guests, because they, unless they are there for months, they do not qualify for squatters' rights. They are guests in your property, and you can have them removed by the police if they overstay their welcome, at least if they're there for less than 30 days or 60 days, depending on your state. So using your multi-unit property for Airbnb can, keep the revenue coming in, and you can still enforce that agreement with those renters. And it's something that's relatively easy to do. It's easy to do safely. You don't have to interact with these people if you don't want to. You can completely automate the check-in process and the checkout process. My wife and I use Airbnb all the time when we travel, and at least half of our interactions with hosts, we never actually encounter them face to face. So you can do this in a very safe way during the pandemic if you are concerned about meeting guests face to face. So yeah, it's a perfect way to house hack during the pandemic with a multifamily property and not having to hassle with that eviction moratorium, which is, a big problem for a lot of landlords out there right now. And as a
Now, would you
final,
say, Brian, that Airbnb rentals, I know for a little bit there, they were having a hard time, like in the beginning, but as of late, I'm hearing that they're not. They're actually doing really well right now. Do you find that to be the case?
well, it depends on the location. A lot of people are skipping the urban travel right now, and they're doing more mountain travel or remote tourist destination travel. Going to small beach towns or small mountain towns or that sort of travel, as opposed to say going to New York City and doing the whole urban travel.
Right.
Because let's face it, those museums that are open are have a super reduced capacity, and there's just less appeal to urban tourism right now. So it just depends on where you're located. Some Airbnb landlords are doing better than ever in 2020. Some Airbnb landlords are having the worst year ever. So it really just depends on where your property is.
I know in my area, when you go towards the mountains right now, their prices like skyrocketed, and it's hard to get a place.
Yeah, no, it's true. Although it's not to say that there's no urban or suburban opportunities for Airbnb landlords. I mean, I have a good friend back in Baltimore, Zach Green, who he has a couple Airbnb properties, and his units, he actually got some medium-term renters in there who were there for like a month or two. And he's and even before that, he had pretty good occupancy throughout the summer. So there are opportunities. So don't discount Airbnb, but you should do your homework and check what occupancy rates are like in your market if you're considering switching to that Airbnb model.
Right. And Christina from New York says in upstate New York, which is about an hour and a half from New York City, they're doing great again, which is similar to what we're finding here in the Philadelphia suburban and mountain and vacation areas as well. And Katie Davis.
I happen to know her pretty well.
Do you? She says it seems like some people might prefer Airbnb to hotels at this point, as it's a space completely on your own without the masses of a bunch of people at a hotel, which I agree with that. I mean, over the last summer, we stayed at a couple, and I would prefer it. I like Airbnb myself.
Yeah, I mean, so Katie's my wife, of course, for those of you who don't know. But she and I are actually traveling this weekend, just doing a little staycation near home. And we thought about staying at a hotel in the city where we live, in Brasilia. But we ended up renting a house that's about a half hour outside of the city for partially that reason. We don't want to deal with crowds, deal with people. We want our own space. And, it's just safer. And let's face it, it's nice to get out of the city.
It is.
When you live downtown and you haven't really been able to do any traveling this year. So, yeah.
And Christina also added that some people from New York City are actually coming to upstate to quarantine. So that's interesting too.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a comment from Eddie here. He said, I was looking into the HUB government website was that maybe meant to be HUD, like Department of Housing and Urban Development, for programs, FHA, and opportunities. So he's talking about for financing multifamily properties. And Eddie, that is a great point, and something that is actually we were going to mention right here is that you can use conventional financing, including Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac loans, some of which have down payment requirements as low as 3%. So, way lower down payments. And we'll link to an article on our blog that outlines some of those programs and how you can use those as a real estate investor, as a house hacker. So, yeah, you can get way better financing terms, from the lower down payment to lower interest rate to lower points and settlement costs. So great point, Eddie. And way easier to finance. You can't do that, infinitely, but for your first couple of properties, you can get away with using conventional financing if you move in.
And another thing to, keep in mind here is that Airbnbs and traveling like that keeps our babies safe.
Well, that is very true.
That was
And
spoken
you know,
by
you don't.
Katie.
So here's the thing: is that you don't have to buy a multifamily property in order to house hack. You can create an informal granny flat or casita or income suite without actually changing the zoning of your property to being a multi-unit property. You can, set up a basement apartment or an above garage apartment where you can put up a little tiny house, on your property if you have a large property. As long as it has a separate entrance, its own kitchen and bathroom and
Hmm.
sleeping space, it's its own contained thing. You can rent that out on Airbnb, as we've been discussing with the more traditional house hacking, or you can rent it to a long-term renter like a college student or a grad student or whatever, a young professional. And if you do go the Airbnb route, then again, you can skirt around that eviction moratorium and still be able to enforce your agreement with your
Absolutely.
renters. Um, but a lot of people, it's not a very big renovation to separate out a basement apartment. A lot of basements have their own separate entrances anyway. So something to keep in mind if you live in a single family home and you're not looking to move, but you are interested in house hacking, that's another option that you can explore, especially during COVID.
We also have course information from Al Williamson's Airbnb course. I will get that link and put it in the. Did you do it already? Is that why you're smiling?
No, no.
Okay.
I actually don't have that link handy, but so, one other thing, speaking of renovating your own home, another way that you can house hack during the pandemic pretty easily and effectively is doing a live-in flip, where you buy a single family home or a multi-family home if you're feeling that instead. And you can move in and renovate it over your own timetable, especially if you're handy. But even if you're not, you can hire contractors to do that for you. And move out. So you live there while you're renovating it, and then when you're finished renovating it, you sell it and move on to the next property. But it's a great way to house hack without having to deal with housemates
Hmm.
or immediate neighbors. So if you hold a property for at least 1 year, then you can avoid short-term capital gains taxes, which are taxed at your normal income tax rate. You are taxed at the lower long-term capital gains tax rate. If you hold the property for 2 years, then you meet the homeowner exemption. So the first $250,000 in profits are exempt from income taxes. If you're single, it's $500,000 if you're married and filing jointly. So, you move into a property that needs some work, you renovate it on your own schedule over the course of a year or so, and then you sell it and move on to the next property. But your profits from doing that live-in flip often will outweigh any housing costs you had during that year or so that you lived there. So, it's a way that we don't normally talk about house hacking, but it's a great way to house hack, particularly right now during the pandemic, if you don't actually want to deal with renters. So one more option in your toolkit
Which
for
is
house
pretty
hacking
cool.
during the pandemic. Yeah, and again, you don't have to worry about the eviction moratorium either, since you're
Right.
not actually renting anything out.
That's the name of the game right now is trying to escape the eviction moratorium.
Right. So, speaking of which, Denny, you have a pretty unique way of house hacking. You host an international exchange student.
I
So tell
do.
us a little bit about how that has worked out for you, how that works, the stipend. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I crazy as I was at the time, I my kids finally left the nest and I wasn't ready, so I happened to talk to somebody, I believe, and they told me about hosting an international student. I was like, "Oh, that sounds cool." So I looked into it and signed up, and we got Alex, and it's been really cool. I mean, we experienced this whole COVID with him, which was tough. Um, but it's been great, and there is a stipend, so you get paid. Every area is different. My area, we get about 1,200 a month, which is currently our almost our full mortgage, mine and my husband's. So
It's great.
it's a great way to live for free. And there's so many experiences. Like I got friends out of this. I talk to his mother all the time, and it's just a really, really good experience. So if you ever
Yeah, we do have.
consider, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say we have a link to where you can check out the company that Denny and her husband go through
Oh,
for.
Christina, the company's name is Cambridge, and they're really good. They've been so supportive, especially through this since March, because there's been a lot of things to navigate. Alex actually just returned back, so it's nice to have him back, but there's just so many different nuances you have to do, and they're extremely supportive, so it's been really cool.
Yeah, and we added the link there, Christina, into the comments if you want to check them out. Trent Thompson checked in from sunny Houston. And
Nice.
Tim Dooley asked here, he said, do mortgage companies qualify you for a loan if you can't afford the house if you indicate that you're going to create an Airbnb space on the property? So the way that works, Tim, is you can use the income from other units to help you qualify for the mortgage. So they do it based on long-term rents, and I think it's 75% of the gross rent amount is what they allow you to put towards your income to help you qualify on an income level for the mortgage. So yes, you can use that future income from the extra units, the extra rental units, for qualifying for your mortgage.
And not all lenders may do it that way, but there are some that do. So it just might be a matter of just finding the right one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for conventional lenders, I think that's a hard rule across the board. Is 75% of the gross rents you can put towards your income qualification for the property. But portfolio lenders, private companies that lend against rental properties, that's lender by lender. So you just have to speak with them and see what they say. All right. So Denny, our fifth and final pandemic house hacking tactic. Take it away.
Well, rent your space for stuff, and then you don't have to worry about evicting, and you don't have to worry about, dealing with, one-to-one person during this pandemic. For instance, if you have a garage, rent it. I've done that. I've rented out, and people are looking for stuff like that constantly. So garage, even if you have, we have a very large area that has parking space, and there are people looking to park campers and stuff, and it can still reduce your your mortgage, and there's no work really involved in that. There's not going to be a nuisance with that. It's maybe somebody coming in and out, and you can actually put rules in whatever lease you choose to draw up for these things. I mean, even a basement you can use for storage and whatnot. And then there's no you don't have to worry about the moratorium either, the eviction moratorium, because you just get rid of the stuff. There is certain rules that each state has regarding that, but it's way easier than removing a person, a family, or whatever. So if you have extra room, let people put their stuff in it.
Yeah, so you touched on a couple points there that are worth diving a little bit deeper into. One is that there's self-storage space that you can rent out, for example, in your garage or your basement or whatever. There's also parking space that you can rent out, and there are different online websites that you can use for either one of those. So Sparefoot.com I know is one for it's like an Airbnb, a peer-to-peer service for self-storage space. And then there are also parking spot renting companies as well out there that you can use. So, and not just for cars, but to your point, Denny, RVs, boats. A lot of people want covered parking for these.
Yes.
So if you do have a larger garage or even uncovered, just a larger driveway where you can fit someone's RV or someone's boat, there's a huge demand for that, even in more rural areas. So, and that's very low stress, low hassle kind of landlording, self-storage or parking spaces. So you don't have to worry about the regulations or any of that stuff. It's much easier.
Absolutely.
And Christina says she has a garage that's sitting empty, and she's actually getting ready to do this herself.
Awesome.
And, so we should have pulled some of those links together. So as far as self-storage space, so I can think of two companies off the top of my head. One is Sparefoot.com, and the other is Neighbor.com. So those are relatively easy here, but I'll put them in the.
You got them. Yeah. I also did put them in the host chat if you can transfer it over to the public side for the Airbnb course seminar, free seminar, webinar.
So I just put links there to Neighbor.com and Sparefoot.com. And then as far as parking spaces, so Spacer is one that I'm aware of, although I'm not sure that that's available in every single state. That might be a regional service. I can't remember. There are a whole bunch of websites though for renting out parking spaces. So quick Google search.
And frankly, one of the best is like Facebook on their marketplace. That's absolutely. Probably one of the better ways to even do it.
Yeah, and Craigslist, oldie but goodie. Still super popular. So don't be afraid to use that. We'll also put a link here to our free house hacking calculator. If you want to look at that, this is particularly useful for multifamily house hacking or housemate house hacking. A lot of people feel less comfortable doing housemate house hacking during the pandemic, so we didn't include that one today. But if you are interested in some more tactics for house hacking that we didn't go over today, we'll also include one final link to an article that goes through 10 different tactics for house hacking in the comments as well. And then, I see, Denny, you sent that link here. You know what? It's not letting me copy that link to Al Williamson's Airbnb course. But we will put that in the podcast page that will go up tomorrow. So, all right, Denny, any final thoughts before we wrap it up about COVID-friendly house hacking tactics?
No, but Christina brings up a good point. Check with your local authorities, and that is so true because you don't know what they will disallow, what they will allow, and whatnot. And you don't want to get in trouble with them. That can be an issue. I mean, even some homes are in like housing developments that have rules and whatnot, and if you're storing somebody's boat in your parking or in your driveway or whatever, you could get in trouble. So yes, make sure and check with your local authorities before you do anything like that.
No question. All right, well, on that note, we're going to wrap it up for today. We will see you guys next Tuesday at 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And as always, send us an email or a message with any topics that you want to hear about. This is about you guys. It's not about us. So let us know what you want to hear about.
Have a great day.